Hello, welcome back to my channel What If Legend. This what if Naruto lived as Deku's part 1. The like goal for this video is 15 likes. The sooner the like goal is completed, the sooner I will upload the part of this what if. Disclaimer, I don't own Naruto nor this fanfic. Summary of the story. This what if it mixed up of Naruto universe and My Hero universe. The boy who the sludge villain had tried to possess had not been Katsuki Bakugo. It had been Naruto. As he was suffocating, on the verge of losing his life, a torrent of memories not of his own flooded his mind. Memories of a superhuman being glowing with a red light, an incredibly powerful person who looked just like him. Another him, from another world, from another life. Oi, Kiba! Pass it to me! A blonde-haired boy yelled. Listening to his call, Kiba kicked the ball at him. It looked like it was going to go out of bounds. It had been kicked way too high up in the air. However, the blonde-haired boy crouched and suddenly launched himself in the air. It was as if there was a jetpack attached to his back. He got 2 times more airtime than the world record of the best NBA player in the world from a few generations ago, and, to top it all off, he also made an impressive flip in the air before kicking the soccer ball with the heel of his foot, accurately blasting it towards the corner of the opposing team's goal post like a rocket. It was the exaggerated swagger of a mutant-type Quirk user. The goalkeeper had not even seen the ball coming. Before he knew what happened, not only that the ball flew past his head like a bullet, it even made a hole in the net of the goal post and exploded with a loud boom when it smashed against the outer wall of the school in the back of the soccer field. The blonde boy landed on the ground gracefully and made a victory pose, quite proud of the awesome goal that he had just scored. But the other children on the pitch did not look surprised in the least. Instead, they were annoyed. "You bastard, always showing off and stealing my thunder!" Kiba yelled, but in spite of his words, there was a toothy grin on his face as he came and high-fived him. Booing sounds came from the opposing team. "Sensei, it's not fair." Uzumaki used his quirk again. One of the boys in the opposing team complained. The PE teacher, a burly middle-aged man with a whistle hanging from his neck, frowned in thought as he looked at Naruto. He appeared like a rather normal middle school boy. If you ignore the fluffy golden fox ears on his head, the whisker-like birthmarks on his face, and the bushy but silky-looking golden fur tail at his back. Uzumaki Naruto had a rather simple and seemingly banal quirk, a fox quirk. In the early days of the apparition of quirks, animal-type quirks were not seen as very formidable, looking rather tame compared to emitter-type quirks that could create explosions, release electricity, summon tornadoes, and so on and so forth. However, as of late, with the emergence of amazing heroes with animal-type quirks, people gained a newfound respect for such simple mutant-type quirks. For example, among the top 10 strongest heroes in Japan, one had a rabbit quirk. While rabbits were harmless and skittish creatures normally, the rabbit hero, Mirko, could not be any more different than that. She was relentless and violent, a woman that never backed down from a fight. Her explosive power and speed were something to be feared. Nowadays, over 80% of Japan's population had a quirk. Quirkless people had become increasingly rare with the passing of years. To prevent potential accidents and tragedies, students in public schools were forbidden from using their quirks. However, the lines were rather blurred when it came to heteromorphic type quirks. Generally, mutant types did not have to activate any sort of power to enhance themselves. They were physically superior by nature. Performing superhuman feats was the norm for them. The PE teacher was broken off from his musings when another blonde boy, "Why were all blondes problem children?" kicked the ball and a mighty explosion propelled it forward, not any slower than Uzumaki Naruto's previous shot. The goalkeeper of the opposite team had been too scared to even attempt defending and instead jumped away from the goal post, afraid for his life. A sharp whistle noise rang and both Naruto and Kiba suddenly crouched and covered their ears with their hands. "Sensei, stop, it hurts!" they yelled at the same time, their sense of hearing being way more sensitive than that of regular humans. While Uzumaki Naruto had a fox quirk, Kiba, a brown-haired boy, had a mutant-type quirk as well, a dog quirk. Similar to Naruto, Kiba also had a pair of pointed dog ears on top of his head. In addition, his teeth and nails were sharper than average and a dog's scraggly tail wagged listlessly at his back. With such similar quirks and matching personalities too, both of them were hyperactive, boisterous, and loud. The two boys had clicked off from the very first moment they had met. Naruto and Kiba were best friends. Bakugo, red card. "You're out." Team Blue gets a free kick. The PE teacher shouted, but all the members of the red team started complaining out loud. "Not fair. Why can Uzumaki use his quirk and Katsuki not? You're biased, it's not fair, Sensei." The PE teacher felt like wanting to pull out his hair due to frustration. How could he explain to the students that mutant-type quirks were different from emitter-type quirks? It was, indeed, unfair, but such was life too. The only way to stop people with mutant-type quirks from using their strength and natural advantages, imagine a four-armed man for a goalkeeper, was to ban them from playing completely, but that would lead to the opening of another can of worms, discrimination, which was even worse. Allowing everyone to use their quirks was not an option either because it would completely sideline quirkless people too. No matter how one went about it, a particular group would be disadvantaged. Banning emitter-type quirk users from using their powers was the most fair option there was. In the end, the match did not get a proper finish as it devolved into a huge argument between students and the teacher, with the principal being forced to intervene in order to put a stop to it. ATCH. The soccer championship was cancelled this year too. To heck with that. They should just let everyone use their quirks. We'd still kick everyone's butts, the fox-like boy said as he walked on the sidewalk while juggling skillfully with a soccer ball. But of course, we're the strongest in the whole school. Why is the school catering to all these losers with useless quirks? Kiba said in annoyance. Oi, that was mean. Izuku here doesn't have a quirk at all, Naruto said. The boy in question stammered and waved his hands as if to say he doesn't mind it, but Naruto put his hands on his waist and said, "Listen, man, you gotta have more confidence. You can't let people walk over you like that. Stand up for yourself. If you don't punt dog breath when he goes out of line, he'll never learn his lesson." What was that, cunt? I'll kick your ass!" Kiba yelled and a growl-like sound came from him. Easy for you to say that when you have such an amazing quirk," Izuku murmured. He was a short and rather scrawny boy with wavy green hair and a timid-looking freckled face. Izuku had spoken quietly enough that regular people would not be able to hear his words, but the two boys next to him just happened to have an extremely sharp sense of hearing, among other things. "Even if you can't do something by yourself, you should rely on your friends a bit," Naruto said with a grin and threw his arm around Izuku's shoulder. "That's what friends are for. We help each other. I still haven't forgotten how you helped me pass my maths term exam. If it weren't for you, I would be stuck in cram school now." The green-haired boy smiled shyly at Naruto's encouragement. "That's right. You might be quirkless, but you're our friend," Kiba said in agreement and punched him lightly in the shoulder. "And if that exploding blonde bastard tries to find trouble with you again, just tell me. I will beat the crap out of him every time he tries to bully you." "There's no need for that. Gotsuki is leaving me alone these days," Izuku said and showed a big smile. While the three boys were in the same year, Naruto and Kiba were not in the same class as Izuku. Izuku and his bully, Bakugo, were in a different class. After Kiba and Naruto took Izuku under their wings, Bakugo had tried to find trouble with Izuku, for betraying their class and siding with the enemy. Bakugo had an intense rivalry with the amazing duo of fox and dog quirk users from the other class. In truth, Bakugo could not care less about his class, it was just a pretext he found to mess with Izuku. All that repressed anger and annoyance at not being able to defeat an Izuku Kiba had to be vented somewhere, and what better choice of a target than a quirkless boy that could not defend himself. However, things did not end well for the bully. Once Kiba found out about it, in a fit of anger, he jumped on Bakugo the next time he saw him and proceeded to beat him so badly that even his mother had trouble recognizing his face. That day, Izuku Kiba had claimed the position as the top dog in Aldra Junior High. Kiba got suspended for 2 weeks for that stunt. Bakugo's mother had even tried to press charges, but she dropped the matter soon after because altercations between teenagers with quirks were far too common these days. Seeing as her son had not suffered any lasting trauma from the incident, it would be difficult for her case to find any success in court. Regular teens had always been a volatile mass of emotions, pride, and more energy than they know what to do with it. Adding superpowers into the mix was a recipe for disaster. For example, only a few days ago, a teen boy had stolen someone's bag, and when he was found out and cornered, he went out of control. Transforming into a giant humanoid monster, he started to wreak havoc. The incident made it to the local newspapers. As the three boys walked home together, they kept talking and joking around happily. Eventually, they had to disband their merry little group, seeing as they lived in different areas of the district. As Naruto walked home, he continued to play with his soccer ball. Sometimes, he would run at the passers-by coming from the opposite direction, startling them, only to do a rainbow soccer trick, kicking the ball with his heel, from the back, over his and his opponent's heads before rushing past them. Sometimes, people would get annoyed with him, but most of them would usually just smile helplessly at him. After years of witnessing his shenanigans, Most of the people on that street had become familiar with the energetic fox-like boy. Right as he passed by a playground, the younger kids that saw him with the ball quickly rushed out and crowded around him. "Naruto-san! Show us some cool tricks!" they all yelled enthused. As per usual, Naruto did not ignore their pleas. He loved showing off his soccer skills. Alright, just gimme some space, yo," he said and entered the playground with his ball. With the kids moving a bit back and making a circle around him, Naruto grinned at them and put his foot on top of the ball. Suddenly, he rolled the ball towards him and lifted it in the air with the tip of his foot, right above his head. Before the ball could fall to the ground, he stepped in and bent down a bit, the ball landing right on the back of his neck. So far, so good. It was nothing amazing, just a next all any other soccer enthusiast could probably do that. It was what followed that made the kids all break into loud cheers. In an impressive display of dexterity and body-eye coordination, Naruto used his knees, feet, and even his fluffy tail to juggle the ball spectacularly. All good things come to an end, however, and accompanied by a chorus of disappointed whines from the kids, Naruto left the playground and started heading home once again. Suddenly, an obnoxious baby laughter ringtone rang and Naruto groaned. It was his cell phone. Flipping it open and answering the call, he was forced to distance the phone from his sensitive hearing as a woman's loud voice blasted into his eardrums. "Naruto! What are you doing, you delinquent? School finished 40 minutes ago, get home already." Alright, sheesh, I am on my way, why are you yelling?" he yelled back. "Don't you raise your voice at me, young man. Just wait till you get home." Naruto snorted and shut the flip of his phone closed, effectively ending the call. He did not really care about his mother's retaliation and threats in the least. All she or his father could do was yell at him. And that was a common issue for many parents nowadays. When children had quirks so powerful that they would not look out of place in a superhero comic book, their parents were often at a loss in how to deal with them when they acted rebelliously. What's her problem anyway? Not like I'm doing any illegal shit. I'm not even smoking like the cool kids, and I'm not doing drugs either like punks who skip classes. All she does is bitch about my grades and for coming home late every day. Picking up his ball in his hands, he started walking home, not even in the mood to play around anymore. What do I even need good grades for anyway? He grumbled and kicked a piece of rock on the sidewalk in frustration. He was not oblivious in regards to how amazing his quirk was. While a fox quirk seemed nothing special compared to some emitter quirks out there, Naruto had yet to meet anyone who could beat him in a one-on-one fight. Even someone with an overpowered quirk like Bakugo Katsuki from his school couldn't beat him. After all, Naruto was a tiny bit stronger than Kiba, and the dog quirk user had mopped the floor with Bakugo. Furthermore, besides his enhanced dexterity and physical capabilities, Naruto's fox quirk granted him a powerful sense of smell, very sensitive hearing, and excellent eyesight and night vision too. His career paths were promising, even if he didn't become a hero, which was doubtful. He could easily join the police special forces. The anti-drug department would do anything short of killing to get someone like him in their ranks. It was while he was having these thoughts that something had all of a sudden slammed into the crown of his head and he toppled over, the sight in front of his eyes darkening. So disoriented and shocked he was that he didn't even register the pain for a moment. He didn't understand what was happening. But 2 seconds later, pain exploded from his head. It was as if someone had cracked his skull open with an axe as a mind-splitting headache made him break out in cries of pain as he held his head. The wet and sticky feeling on his hands let him know that he was bleeding and bleeding profusely at that. Even as his eyes were tightly shut as he tried to cope with the insane amount of pain, his sensitive fox ears picked up the sound of liquid flowing close by. His eyes opened in shock when he felt his body getting engulfed by a wet and disgusting feeling. What the he cried out, but the green mass of mud and goo that had suddenly entrapped him took that chance to cover his mouth and nose, muffling his yells of fear. Instincts took over and the boy started fighting desperately for his life. His nails lengthened into claws and his body began spasming and squirming as he kicked and scratched at the mass of goo with everything he had. However, his struggle accomplished nothing except making him burn oxygen faster. With the green sludge covering his mouth and nose, he could not breathe. His movement slowed down to a stop and his arms fell down lifelessly. He was moments away from dying from asphyxiation. Help! Somebody! Help me! Naruto cried out in his mind. But there was nobody around. He was attacked in a less frequented alley where people did not pass by too often. To top it off, his attacker had muffled his cries and subdued him too quickly for anyone to hear his struggle. His sight went pitch dark as his eyes rolled in the back of his head. He lost consciousness. In a minute or two, he would die. It is said that moments before dying, people see their lives flash before their eyes. But what played at the front of Naruto's mind were not memories of his life. They were the memories of a different person. An orphan and a lonely boy who pulled all kinds of pranks and annoyed the hell out of everyone just for them to notice his existence. A boy who could make clones of himself. Someone whose creed was to never give up and never go back on his word. Someone who fought against a godlike man who had annihilated an entire military city by himself. Someone who had even become strong to fight on equal grounds against a goddess. That someone looked eerily similar to him. He had no fox ears and no tails either, but everything else was too similar for it to be a coincidence. The same blonde hair, the same baby blue eyes, the same 3 pairs of whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. They even had the same name. It was him. An incredibly powerful version of Naruto Uzumaki from another life, from another world. The sludge villain chortled to himself. Lucky, lucky. Sulaki. He had never expected to escape after All Might had defeated him and sealed him in a plastic bottle. And, not only that he had escaped, but the bottle he had been sealed into also happened to crash into the head of a passing by boy with a fox Quirk. Disoriented and wobbly from the powerful hit, the boy had been knocked down, unaware of his surroundings for a moment. The fact that he had not been knocked out cold was a testament to his toughness. But with him momentarily out of it, the sludge villain had to spend next to no effort in capturing the boy. A fox Quirk. Not the best, but not bad either. The villain hummed in glee as the mud his body consisted of started to flow through the boy's mouth. He was going to take over him, to possess him. Suddenly, a shrill scream of agony erupted from the sludge villain as a glowing chain of light burst from the boy's spine and impaled the green goo around him. "What's happening?" the villain screamed in incomprehension. His mud-like body offered him a degree of resistance against physical attacks that almost bordered immunity. He could not be harmed even by bullets, much less by some pointed chain. However, his train of thought ceased when another golden chain burst from the boy's back and stabbed into the mud, making the villain scream himself hoarse from the pain once more. Terror engulfed the sludge villain's mind and the shadow of death crept into his heart. He had to get away. He didn't understand how could he be wounded so severely by some chains, but he had a feeling that if another one or two of those chains impaled him, he would perish. But right as the mass of green goo crawled out of the boy's body and tried to scurry away, two more golden chains burst out of the still unconscious boy's back and rose high up in the air. A dome of golden light had suddenly come into existence, and when the sludge villain tried to pass through it, much to his shock, the mud making up his body dried up and solidified on contact. He lost control over his body and that portion of solidified mud broke away from him. Further thought regarding that anomaly ended, however, as the sharp and pointed ends of the four golden chains that created the chain dome had suddenly stabbed into his body. The sludge villain could not even find the strength to voice out his frustration and unwillingness to die. Even as the last portion of his body dried up and broke into pieces, his last thought was one of disbelief, unable to accept or understand how after escaping from the hands of the number one strongest hero, he would die at the hands of some nameless 14-year-old boy. "Ah, how could I make such a mistake?" a very tall and thin young man yelled at himself. As he climbed down the stairs from the rooftop of the building where he landed together with the fan boy who had clung to him, All Might was stupefied to discover that the plastic bottle in which he had sealed the sludge villain was no longer in the pocket of his cargo pants. That rush of frustration and exasperation was so intense that it made him slightly dizzy, and he had to stop momentarily to not puke blood again. "I can't even go searching for him anymore, I've reached my limit for today." As he passed by a window, a sharp glint shone in the corner of his eyes, and the blond man turned his head to see a golden dome of light rising from between two buildings. But it only lasted for a few seconds before it disappeared. However, the aftermath deeply startled him as he saw the two buildings that the dome of light had touched started tilting towards each other. It looked like that golden dome of light had damaged the outer walls of the buildings. Color drained from his face and, in spite of the great harm he was doing to his body by forcing himself to go back into his muscular form after having already reached his limit, All Might smashed his way through the window and launched himself towards the scene. He arrived there just in time to see a boy in his mid-teens lying unconscious on the ground and pieces of dried up green mud and sludge scattered all over the place. He recognized those remains as the sludge villain that he had encountered only a few minutes ago. But All Might did not waste his already limited time thinking too much about the situation. Saving the lives of other people came first. Scooping the unconscious boy in his arms, he quickly jumped into the collapsing buildings to save the rest of the people trapped within. Fortunately, All Might was not the only hero that had arrived at the scene speedily. Other prominent heroes such as Kami, Death Arms, and Backdraft had also come to help the people trapped in the half-collapsed buildings. Fortunately, nobody had died, but there were dozens of injured people and the property damage was significant as well. But where did that golden light come from? What kind of quirk is that? It was the question that everyone was asking on the internet, seeing as the incident had gone viral. Unfortunately for the curious people, nobody had managed to capture the actual moment in a photo or in a video, so they were not clear on what had caused the buildings to collapse. What was clear, however, was that a villain with a powerful quirk had tried to attack a young boy who was on his way home from school. What made the situation go viral is that not only that 2 buildings had been destroyed and dozens of people had been injured, but that the villain in question was found dead at the scene as well. And that had led to all sorts of speculations. Did that boy kill the villain? But how? According to the authorities, he only has a fox quirk. It was a bad matchup against the sludge villain. Maybe he has 2 quirks? Is that even possible? I mean, there's Endeavor's son. He has both a fire and an ice quirk. Yo, hear me out, what if there is a third person? What if someone else was at the scene and killed the villain before running away? A vigilante? While the media outlets and the people on the internet were fussing greatly over this matter, the boy in question was still unconscious, in the hospital. 2 days passed since the sludge villain's attack and subsequent death, but the victim had to regain his consciousness. My son, is he going to be okay? Please tell me he's fine. A blonde-haired man said, his voice cracking towards the end. His eyes were filled with unshed tears. Next to him, a red-haired woman was crying in silence, her face buried in her palms. Naruto's parents were greatly distraught over the news. Fatal accidents in today's society were much more common than several decades ago. Cases of young children dying due to their own quirks or cases of villains killing people were not rare, to say the least. When such a high percentage of people possessed superpowers, it stood to reason that the mortality rate among average people would increase as well. Regardless of all that, it had never gotten any easier for doctors to tell the truth to the parents of a dying child. Currently, I can't promise you anything. There are signs that he had almost died of asphyxiation. If his brain was left without oxygen for too long, I fear. The doctor let out a sigh and trailed off when his words made the child's mother break. Her husband could do nothing except for hugging her to his chest, even as tears were rolling down his cheeks too. Do not despair. There is still hope, the doctor said, trying to alleviate their suffering. Your boy is a warrior. He might fight through this. There is still hope, he said, repeating himself. Just as he finished his words, a nurse arrived in a rush and said, Dr. Takakawa. He's awakened. The boy is awake and he asked for water. Without waiting for the medical staff's permission, the 2 parents rushed towards their son's room at the same time. A white ceiling, an oddly familiar and unpleasant smell of antibiotics, and the sound of medical machines beeping in the background. Naruto did not take long to realize that he was in a hospital. But before he could make sense of it, a burning sensation in his throat made him unconsciously ask for water. A few moments later, Two people burst through the door of his hospital room at the same time, rushing to his bed. Blonde spiky hair, fair complexion, blue eyes, a thin build and a kind smile on his face. A face that looked so similar to his. It was none other than Minato Namikaze. Father? He croaked. Suddenly, a curtain of red hair obstructed his view as a woman threw her arms around him, hugging him for all he was worth and soaking the crook of his neck with her tears. Mother? Outside of his will, his eyes stirred up and he started to cry as well. He had never thought he would one day see his parents alive. He had seen their chakra remnants and the reanimated corpse of his father during the war. But they had not been alive. Not like now. Naruto. My son. My dear Naruto. Kushina could not stop crying. Minato too sat on the edge of the bed and patted his head, while trying to stop his own tears from flowing. The nurses and the doctor on the side found their own eyes getting wet too at the emotional sight of the reunited family. However, at that moment, a sudden thought cut through Naruto's heart like a searing hot blade. This is a lie. Only an illusion. He could still remember it as if it had happened yesterday. He could still vividly recall the rabbit goddess, Kaguya, killing Sasuke and then pulling out the Baijiu from his body. He could still vividly remember the god tree's branches wrapping around him and the blood-red moon shining ominously in the sky. He started to cry even harder as his arms wrapped around his mother's back, embracing her as if it was the last time. But after a few moments, his hands came together and his fingers formed a ram seal. "K," he whispered. However, nothing happened. "Kai," he said, this time speaking out loud. Kushina lifted her head and looked at him in worry. "What's wrong, honey?" Naruto closed his eyes and sobbed in silence. "This isn't real. None of this is real. Only an illusion to trick me. An illusion of the life I've never had," he said. Admitting those words out loud caused him untold amounts of pain. What are you saying, dear?" "I'm real. I'm here," Kushina said, starting to get scared of what her son was saying. Even if it was only an imaginary world, an illusion, Naruto could not help his tears. "I love you, Mom." Looking up at his father he told him too, "I love you, Dad. I wish I could stay here forever. I wish I could be with you forever." He could not continue as he choked on a sob. "But I can't. This isn't real." He put his hands again in a ram seal and shouted, "Release Kai!" Alerted by the boy's shouts, the doctor and the nurses pulled away Minato and Kushina from his bed. Even as Naruto started to shout in desperation as if he was trying to break a spell, one of the nurses came with a syringe and injected a serum into his neck. In but a few seconds, the boy's agitation disappeared and he closed his eyes. A few moments later, he fell asleep. "Come on, man, even Bakugo doesn't want to miss out on this. We gotta show that bastard who the best class is," Kiba said, his voice half annoyed, half pleading. Since the soccer championship had been cancelled without the two rival teams finding out who exactly was the best, the students decided to have an unofficial match. After classes, outside of school, and decide it once and for all. Sorry, man, I can't. Dad needs my help with the car. 2 weeks passed since the sludge villain incident happened and Naruto had become the most famous kid in his school. However, it only took a few days for everyone to realize that he was a changed person since that day. Gone was the boisterous boy who would play with a soccer ball even in the classroom during breaks. Gone was the full of life and energetic child that always showed a toothy grin to everyone. While most people chalked it up to him almost dying and dealt with it accordingly, Izuku Kiba could not readily understand why Naruto never wanted to hang out after school with him and the gang anymore, or why he had become so quiet and introverted. You were a great help, Naruto, thank you. Minato said while wiping his hands of engine oil with a piece of rag. I didn't do much, only gave you some wrenches and screws, Naruto said with a bright smile, visibly happy at his father's compliments. It may not be much for you, but it meant a lot for me. Lots of time and effort saved by not getting up from beneath the car every time just for a wrench, Minato said and mirrored his son's bright smile. He threw his arm around Naruto's shoulder and said, Tell you what, how about we take your mother and we all go out today for a pizza tonight instead of having dinner at home? For real? The boy said in excitement. When did I ever lie to you? If possible, Naruto's smile became even wider. Awesome. I'll go tell Mom. Helping his father around the garage, mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, taking out the trash, and even helping out his mother with cooking, Kushina had not even known her son could cook. Ever since almost dying at the hands of the sludge villain, it was as if Naruto had become a completely different person. While beforehand he was bratty and had a tense relationship with his parents, nowadays it looked like he was attached to their hip. He was doing everything in his power to be together with them for as long as possible every day. It had to be said that both Minato and Kushina were deeply moved by the changes in their son. Not a day passed without Kushina giving him at least a half-a-minute-long hug. If it was Naruto from before, he would try to get away from her arms as fast as possible while saying in annoyance that he wasn't a little kid anymore. But nowadays, whenever his mom hugged him, Naruto melted in her arms and hugged her back just as tight. Whenever his father called him for a game of chess, Naruto would even put down his homework and come play with him. It was to the point where his parents were starting to worry about him and were thinking about going with him to a psychologist for therapy. It was only Naruto's insistence that he was perfectly fine that stopped them from going through with it. I just never appreciated how lucky I am to be alive, Naruto said when they had tried to talk to him about their worries regarding the drastic changes in his behavior. How lucky I am to have parents. Good parents like you. I almost died. You saw me when I woke up at first. I thought I was dreaming. I thought it was an illusion. But I survived. I want to make the most of my life. And I want to show you every day how much I appreciate and respect you. Those heartfelt words completely disarmed Minato and Kushina of all the arguments that they had prepared beforehand to convince him of going to therapy. In the first place, It was impossible for them to be mad about the fact that their teenage son stopped being a brat and showed his affection for them so openly now. Even as almost 1 month passed since he had regained the memories of his past life, Naruto still felt like he was dreaming. For a long time, he had thought that his current life was nothing but an illusion. He had thought that the infinite Tsukumi that Madara had cast on the moon had entrapped him too after he lost the fight against Kaguya. However, as days passed one by one, he was beginning to accept that his current life was not an illusion. In the first place, he could not feel the existence of chakra. He had tried countless times to access it, but to no avail. Furthermore, Japan and the society he lived in currently could not be any more different from the elemental nations and Konohagakure no Sato. They were so different and there were so many new things that his mind alone could have not imagined such stuff. It was impossible for Genjutsu to show him something that he had never heard of before. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this what if, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.